Hey y'all,
What's going on, everybody?
I'm Jay,
And I'm Chris the Bird Nerd,
and we
and we
are
are the
the
Bird
Bird
Brains.
Brains. I got
Cheers.
cheers. I don't have my Bird Brains mug. I got a
Oh, that's a sweet
Javieri
mug.
mug.
I
Yeah,
like that, man. I need to give me one of those.
yeah, they're on the website. This is Ryan. He's no longer with us, but he lives on in some awesome pictures of him I took back in the
Li-
day.
Still, the memory goes on. So
Yeah,
that's awesome.
he was named after Ryan from The Office, and then his mate was Kelly.
I love that. I know my
Yeah,
my oldest daughter. She's starting to get more and more into the birds. She's spending a lot more time out there, and she's already named like half my birds. And then I just sold almost all of my babies that I've had this last year, and about broke her heart. Dad, you sold Jessica, and I'm like, who? Which ones was Jessica?
yeah.
I'm sorry.
So, my oldest, she's still real young. She's 4, but she would tell you that the cockatiels are hers.
Yeah,
And so when they have babies, right, and I sell the baby, so then, she figured out, and she's not, I guess, not wrong. When they have babies, the babies are also hers, right? Because if her two birds have a baby, then that's hers. So then I sell them, and the first time she was pretty sad, but now she kind of gets excited because I like explained to her that they're going off in the world to have like their own big adventure. And then she's
yeah.
like, so a lady came to get one the other day, and she was like, you know, have fun, like take good care of my bird. It's real,
Oh,
real
that's
cute.
cute. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
and
Yeah, I get asked every, because it goes through spurts, right? It's like breeding season comes, you get a big batch of chicks, and then a few months later is kind of when you sell them. I try to let them mature up before I sell most of my birds, and
yeah,
so a lot of these babies that I sold were all babies from like last fall and late summer, and once I start selling them, all of my kids, Dad, are you going to sell Mikey? Are you going to keep Lollipop and Pink Lemonade? I'm like, yeah, I'm keeping those ones forever. You guys don't have to worry about me getting rid of
mhm,
them. And they're like, oh, okay. They
yeah.
get pretty worked up about it, but
It comes in waves for me, so I generally have like so right when I put the nest box in, which is like February-ish, pretty much all the birds throw down a clutch. So now here we are in like late June, and I'm starting to sell all those birds.
yeah,
And I know a bunch of people are listening. Like I'll give like Charles a shout out, Charles Cole. But
yeah,
like so he put down a deposit and reserved like a whole bunch of birds for me, and he's
nice.
just like very patiently waiting for the birds, and they're almost ready. But I've had 2 people do this year, which is really the first time it's ever happened. So they put down a deposit on like birds X, Y, and Z, and then I'm like, okay, those birds like by their age they'll be ready to go in like 4 to 5 weeks. And then like a week ago he's like, well, I want to get A, B, and C birds too. And I'm like, okay, but they're a little younger, so like now I'm holding these birds longer, and I don't mind holding them, but it's like I feel bad for him because it's like such delayed
Yeah,
gratification. It's like he's
I
already been waiting a few months.
I branched out a little bit. You'd be proud of me, Jay. Because I've still got a few extra Bork chicks from, I mean, they're not like 9 months old now, so they're a lot older. But went out on there was a Bork's Facebook page, and someone was asking if there was anybody. It was funny because the person asking was from like Colorado area, and they were
Mhm.
asking if anyone had Borks, and the lady that I sold one of my Borks to in Colorado, she chimed in and was like, "Hey, like I know a breeder that I got a Bork from. He's doing awesome." And so I chimed in. I was like, "Yeah, I've got a few more Borks." And man, my messages just lit up. I had like 6 people reaching out. "Hey, I'm interested in your Borks," and I have 3 available. All 3 are already sold. Shipping them next week, and then I've got 2 more Rubino babies that came out, and I've got quite a few people asking about them, so it's kind of crazy, but
Yeah,
starting to ship.
well, good. The Bork demand is through the roof.
Yeah,
Um, it's easily the number one bird that I get DM'd about. It's not even close. It's like 50% Borks, 20% Goulians, and then everything else.
yep,
Um, and I don't. it's not that I don't know why, because Borks are awesome. If you want a parrot that's super quiet,
Yeah.
Borks are your bird, right?
Yep.
They're super chill, and then um, and mine tend to have 3 or 4 to a clutch. It's about what I normally get. Sometimes you'll get 5, sometimes you'll get 2, but it tends to be 3 or 4. This year so far, I've had 2 clutches of 3. And
Yeah.
then, so I just traded though. I traded a canary for a male Rosie to go with the one you gave me. And he is pretty. There's a couple different variants of Rosie, but he's the
Right.
like all pink with the blue wings.
Nice. Very cool.
So I'm excited to see, and I've seen her. He's still in quarantine, and so they can see each other and make noise to each other, but they can't get close.
Yeah.
And I've noticed she's starting to spend a lot of time like inside on the inside section to watch him.
Nice.
Um,
That's awesome.
but this is a good segue into what we're going to talk about today, which is just the basics of breeding birds.
Yeah, and I know Jay, both of us have gotten quite a few comments over the last few weeks of, hey, I've got a bird that laid an egg, what do I do? Or, I've got a pair of birds and I want them to breed, what do I do? And so we just wanted to hit the top 5 basic points of what you need to do to successfully breed. And, if you've watched any of our last, recent podcast videos, we've done different levels of species and the difficulties of breeding. So I think we're really just talking about the basics of breeding. So you're easier to breed zebra finches, society finches, etc. And, what do you need in order to get a pair to breed successfully and get chicks to the perch weaned. So I think we can start there. Jay, what are some of the comments that you're getting, and then where do we want to start here?
Yeah, and I will just add, I think everything we're going to talk about applies to all birds, all the
Yeah,
finches. It's just when you get into kind of your
it's the
middle and your
it's
higher
the
tier birds,
foundation is what we're going to
right?
cover.
This is the baseline of I want to breed birds, or what I'm seeing a lot lately is like, oh crap, my birds have decided on their own. Nature finds a way. To quote Dr. Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park, but life finds a way. But so I think just the first thing, right, is making sure you have a pair.
Yeah,
Really easy to zoo with the sexually dimorphic species like zebra finches, classic example. As a general rule, your males have the red beak, the orange cheek. Your females don't, right?
yep,
They have an orange beak and no cheek. So,
yeah, just the tier mark.
and if you have questions about like you need help sexing birds, I mean, I know people use Reddit for that all the time. I answer 3 of
Yeah,
those a day in Reddit, but shoot us a DM. We'll be happy to try and help you out. Some of your
absolutely.
species you got to use like societies. I can kind of do it visually, but it's never perfect. It's singing is the way to figure it out, or egg laying.
Yep, for
But
sure. Probably similar with canaries.
yeah, and I mean a host of other species, right? A lot of your
Yeah.
wax bills. I mean, there's a bunch. So you make sure you have a pair, and then you want that pair to be in breeding condition and of breeding age. So, what's the youngest, Chris, that you would breed a bird?
Um, for your easier species, like your societies, your zebra finches, they tend to be a hardier species, and they come into sexual maturity quite rapidly. So like 9, 10 months,
That's
I feel
exactly.
comfortable. I feel comfortable breeding. I feel like my hens are developed enough; they're not going to get egg bound, which that's usually my number one concern. I don't worry about the males. The only thing I worry about the males is they're just not mature enough. That as they get older, they get more mature, and it's similar to humans, right? Once we hit a certain age, we tend to be a little bit more mature. We try to at least, right? But the hens are what I'm most worried about, making sure that their bodies are developed enough so that they can successfully pass eggs and not get egg bound and die. And so your society zebra finches, 8 to 10 months, wax bills, and some of your other Australian finches like owl finches and things like that, star finches. I would wait a little bit longer, more to that year mark, just because they are so prone to egg binding, just to give those females those extra couple months and make sure that they can develop properly.
Yeah, I agree with everything you say, and I try sometimes like if I'm gonna make a pair, which I in general like to let the birds. figure it out on their own because that tends to be the most compatible, successful situation. But when I'm making pairs, which I sometimes do, I'll intentionally choose like an older male, like 1.5 to 3 year old
Yep.
male, to pair with a younger female, or vice versa,
Yep. Hmm.
because I like somebody to be experienced.
Yep.
And so, okay, so you've got your pair and you're getting them in a breeding condition now. I think we've talked about this a little bit in podcast episodes. I know I have a YouTube video on it. You probably do too. So, sort back. I'm not sure who's going to post this one, but sort back through our channels. You
Yeah.
can find those videos. But basically, what that means is, if you decide, okay, I'm going to start breeding in March, that process to get them ready starts in January.
Right.
So you want to do egg food, which we both have videos on that. You want to increase their caloric intake. You also want to get their light ramping up. You want to, they need to be able to take a lot of baths, things like that. So basically, what you're trying to do is recreate spring
Yep.
in the wild, which will trigger all their hormones to start breeding and then also have their body in the best physical condition to, they have, a little bit of fat reserves, good strong protein, muscles, so that when they do go through breeding, which is very taxing on the parents, they're able
Right.
to survive and thrive through that.
Yeah. And I get quite a few comments, Jay, for multiple species of, hey, I put this male and female together and they're not doing anything, right? And I think many times we just expect, hey, tomorrow I'm going to put a nest box in there and put you guys together, and I want eggs the very next day. And it's a process, right? Just like what you said, you got to bring them into condition. Uh, you know, Many times your zebra finches and society finches, they're laying eggs in your food dish because they just want to breed like crazy all the time. You get into your Gouldian finches, your star finches, owls, parrot finches, etc. You've got to bring them into condition. For my parrot finches, my Gouldian finches, I'm like you said, 3 months before, I'm starting to increase the egg food each day, increase the live food, for the parrot finches, because live food brings them into condition. It's kind of one of their triggers, and then I'm still waiting 1 to 2 months before I'm even introducing like a nest box, right? I'm just building them up, letting them select their pairs, start doing their mating rituals, getting into condition, and then I'm putting in those nest boxes. And by the time I put that in, then they're almost going crazy, right? And it's very
I
quick.
was
They're getting in there, they're building the nest as fast as they can, and it's 1 to 2 weeks, and you've got eggs in the nest already, which is really quick. And so, doing it right, I think sometimes canaries can be frustrating for that. I get so many comments around canaries of my male's singing, but my female's not doing anything, or my eggs aren't fertile, or and I think the light, the food intake, and building them up, several months before is that key factor. And sometimes when you miss that, unfortunately, you almost kind of have to reset that cycle, and you have to wait till the next year to get these birds back into condition to where you want them to breed successfully. So sometimes that can be frustrating, and so just making sure you do it right the first time.
Especially if you're keeping outdoors like we are, you if you miss kind of the natural spring, then you miss it. You can miss it hard and throw birds into a molt and things like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, so you're exactly right. That's the word crazy is what came to my mind too. It's like by the time I actually provide the nest, I want the birds to almost, you know, the minute the nest box goes in, they're like, okay, it's time, let's go. It's like,
Uh-huh. Yeah, they
to
don't even wait for you to get out of the aviary before they're poking their heads through those holes.
right, to make the second office reference of the podcast. It's like, oh my God, it's happening. Okay. Remain calm. That's the level of emotion you're looking for. So,
Yeah. So Jay, so you've got a pair, right?
mhm.
You're bringing them into condition. You're whether it's through light, through increasing their food intake with seeds, insects, egg food, right? They're ready to breed. What kind of nest boxes are you looking at, or what do you need to do as far as the nesting part is concerned, and making sure that happens successfully?
So I have a video on nest boxes. So different species like different things. Some are really not super picky, like your zebra finches especially, they'll pretty much breed in whatever you give them. Society finches, they like the woven nest typically. But every species is a little different. Like I said, I've jumped to my channel. There's a relatively short, like 10-minute video on the different nest box options, and some I've come up with over the years. So um, you want to select kind of the one that makes sense for your species. Do your homework, right?
Yes, yes,
I've talked to people recently. You know who you are. I know you're listening. I won't blow up your spot in public, but like someone that was using like all canary nests, and they had zebras that were breeding, but they were losing eggs over the side,
yeah,
and then they had like splay leg issues, some other problems. So you want to make sure you're using the right type of nest for the birds, and then you want to provide nesting material. I know Chris, we both have videos on that. Chris has a really great
yes,
video on it, especially for canaries. There's a whole host of nesting material. What I'll say for this, for the really high level, is you want no chemicals. You want
yes,
nothing that's ultra fine that can wrap around babies' feet, and you want something that holds up well to like moisture because the birds are going to get in there when they're wet. They're going to poop, humidity, all these things. Now you want it to be, you need a little bit of humidity for the eggs. If you live in a really dry climate, I've even had people that I've told to take a corner of a paper towel, get it wet, and stick it in there to keep the humidity up in the nest for the eggs. But
yep,
you don't want like fungus growing in the nest, which can
yeah.
happen if you're an outdoor keeper like
And
me. I've had it happen. So,
I think for me, because I live in a dry place, right, Jay?
hmm
I provide daily an opportunity for the birds to bathe, and and I'll notice usually like 1 to 2 days before the eggs are supposed to hatch, my female's taking more baths, and then they go back in the nest wet, and that brings that humidity in. They're intelligent birds, and they know what's going on, and they understand that. I've also had, growing up, we used to raise lovebirds, and for some reason, the humidity was a big factor, and we had a hard time hatching babies out. And so would go out, and I would, with a spray bottle, would squirt through the wire and just spray the side of their nest box to try and help increase the humidity levels, which really helps. So there are a couple of different things that you can do out there for those that live in drier climates, like I do in Utah. Probably not as much of a concern for you, Jay. It's probably the opposite effect, right? The fungus, like you're saying, and too much moisture. So,
yeah, I live in the rainiest city by rain events in the country. So we get something like 260, 290 days of rain a year.
yeah,
So it's pretty nuts. Pretty much right now in the summer, you can count on around 3 p.m. You're going to get a shower. So
yeah. And
yeah.
Jay, maybe just real quick, the one thing
Mhm.
I'd say on the nest material, that my biggest don't is, majority of your items that are cotton based, don't use. Those are the ones that easily get stuck in your bird's nails, wrap around their toes or legs.
hmm
I've heard, countless comments and even experience in the past of mine of baby birds losing their legs, and even adult birds with the nest material getting caught around them. So anything that's cotton based, I would just say don't even try it. It's not worth it. I've seen quite a few people that have, like, they'll post pictures, and it's a beautiful nest, but it's like literally like cotton balls that they've shredded and put in there. And it's like that stuff. It just gets entangled super quick, and it's not easy to clean. It gets dirty really quick. So, yeah, stay away from the cotton fibers of most sources. They
hmm
they typically do not do well in a nest
A
scenario.
good way to test it is take it and wrap around your pinky, and if you kind of pull it tight and then it stays, that's not good.
Yeah,
You want stuff that if you let go it would fall off your finger because that's what you're wanting for the birds to do. And what you said before about the birds are smart. They're smart and they have these are really powerful instincts that the birds
yeah,
have. They know what to do, especially the majority of your finches. The vast majority are parent raised. They have it ingrained in their DNA of what to do. The whole thing we're talking about here is you supporting them doing their job, right?
yeah.
Like I don't fledge baby birds really. The parents do all the work. I just set them up for success,
Yep, you give
right?
them the
It's like
resources and the
mhm.
tools.
Yeah, it'd be like Home Depot used to have these when I was a kid where you'd go and build the birdhouse with your dad or whatever. They give you the wood, the nails, the hammer, and everything, and then you put it together. So that's what you're doing for the bird. You're providing all the tools. they've got to build the birdhouse. So,
Yeah.
okay, so you've got they'll build the nest. Different species do it differently. Like starfinches, canaries, the hen builds it. A lot of species, the male builds. Zebra finches, the male will build it.
Yep.
So you provide that nesting material, let them build, and then especially with zebra finches, you got to watch this because sometimes the inexperienced males, especially, will just keep building the nest over and over and over and over, and
Yeah.
the hen will lay, and they'll just build a new nest
Just
on top of that.
bury the eggs. Yep. And that's
So,
and that comes back to the age, right, Jay?
mhm.
Make sure. And sometimes when you purchase birds from other breeders, or maybe it's a pet store or something like that, you don't know the exact age. But try to know the age, and especially your males in zebra finches. That happens all the time. Yeah. Someone just messaged me this week. Hey, my zebra finch just built a half a nest and then stopped. And I said, how old is it? And it was came out to be a really young male. And I said, it's just immature. He's practicing. He's getting the hang of it. Have some patience. But yeah, they can just. And I've literally had zebra finches fill an entire nest box to the top. Like they can barely fit into the top. They just go nest crazy. It's pretty
Yeah, I
cool.
mean, you little couple ounce bird, and he's got a half a pound of burlap in there. It's like
Yeah.
unbelievable. I've got a video on my Instagram from like last year. I mean, it's literally, I mean, it's half the size of my head. I'm like, how did this bird even do this? Like, who's like, it's like, why am I even putting in nesting material? It's just
Yeah.
this one bird using it all. So once the nest is built, you can withhold nesting material. And I guess now's as good a time as any to say this. Inexperienced birds are going to make mistakes. Just like, I mean, heck, I'm a parent and I don't nail everything every time. So, I want to remind people the wild chick finch survival rate to sexual maturity. So not even like old age, but just to like
Yep.
to breed, it's like 5%.
Yep.
So I know I've said it before on this podcast. I like to remind people of that. So I get messages, one of the chicks died. What did I do wrong? And they're like apoplectic about it. I'm like, I lost one Gouldian chick last week. Sometimes there could be a bunch of stuff that you don't know about that the parents know, like that baby has a birth defect, or the
Yeah.
parents can't keep up with more than X number or whatever. You've got some nature and some instincts going on here. They make hard choices sometimes. They'll toss chicks, all kinds of craziness. Another bird will go in and mess them up. You can scare them, a million things.
Yeah.
But if you are dealing with the that number, if you're at 70%, like you're killing it. You're doing incredible. So don't get discouraged. You're gonna lose chicks. Even my most experienced birds from time to time lose a chick. It's
Yeah.
just they're K type. I think it's K type reproduction where the finch method of reproduction overall is in the spring, all the pairs pair up and they put out as many babies as they can at one time.
Yep.
And they know that, a majority, 95% of those babies are going to die, get eaten,
Right.
at something. So if you lose a chick here or there, that's not necessarily something you did wrong. That's just kind of the way it works,
And
especially with the young ones.
and that brings me to a point that I wanted to discuss too, Jay. You've got your pair. They've built a nest. They've laid eggs, right? And I'll use the same scenario from when they're incubating eggs to when they have chicks in the nest. General rule of thumb: try to give them as much privacy as you can. And I say that especially for those who have birds inside their home and are breeding them inside their home. Obviously, they're going to have more touch points with humans. Um, your easier species, your zebra finches societies, many type pairs, many different birds of like Goulians. There's some pairs that are a lot more lenient, others not as much. Um, Try to limit how many times you're checking the nest, whether they're sitting on eggs or have chicks in the nest. Try to limit how many times you're cleaning around their cage, or feeding them, things like that, because that can disturb the birds, and you get into some of those more sensitive species, and it's if you stay in the room too long, they're done. It's not
Hmm.
even looking in the nest. And so just keep notice of that as well. And my general rule of thumb: most of the species that I have are easier species to breed. I do have a few that I couple of my star pairs I'm really sensitive about because if I do, they abandon the nest. And I have a couple other star pairs that are cool with me checking the nest. It's kind of a you have to get the feel of them, but my general rule is I try to check once a week. Um, I check the first week after about 5 days for fertility, and then I'll check the towards the end of the second week when they should be hatching or close to hatching. And then I wait about a week until the chicks are older. And every day I'm checking the bottom of the cage, making sure nothing got tossed by accident or by some reason or another. And then usually when about a week after they've hatched, then I'll try to check again, things like that. With zebra finches, I could probably check every day and they'll be fine. Some of my Goulian finches, star finches, my Amidina finches, I try to limit it. I want to make sure I'm keeping track and an eye on it and making sure if there's an issue that I can catch it. But I'm also trying to give them space and privacy because that can affect, some of the success on either incubating or raising the chicks.
Yeah, like my gold breast waxbills, who I think, and notice how I'm saying this, I think may have a nest right now, and I'm not
Right.
sure because I won't go within 3 feet of it.
Yeah.
Even if I'm in there cleaning the aviary, I've like stopped cleaning around their nest. I just won't go near it. My zebra finches I could check every day. My Gouldians, and again, this is like a observe your pairs. I posted about this on Instagram this week. It's like a
Yeah, I
huge part
saw
of
it. Yeah.
bird keeping is like observing what's going on and getting to know your birds.
Yeah.
My Gouldians are pretty good sitters as a general rule, but uh, yeah, I I don't. I try pretty hard not to mess with them. And the day I try not to mess with them on hatch day, I try to check the next day. And so
Yeah.
now's a good time to talk about that. So some birds are a day or two here or there, but as a general rule, your finches are a 13-day incubation. So here's where it gets tricky. Experienced hens, as a general rule, will lay 1 to 2 eggs a day, typically one, sometimes two. Like some of my zebras will hammer down two
Yeah.
a day for like 5, 6 days in a row and then start incubating. And the reason they do that is to get all the chicks to hatch on the same day. That way they don't deal with, what you've seen on that nature show where they have one chick that's really big and one chick that's really small because that last chick will always die pretty
Yeah.
much.
Not going to make it.
But your inexperienced hens often do not do that. So you'll see one egg and then she starts sitting. And then the next day there's 2 eggs, but she's sitting. So what that means is there's going to be a 5 day difference between chick one and chick five.
Yep.
And that doesn't sound like that much, but when you consider that in that 5 days, that bird is going to about triple in size, if not quadruple, that's
Yep.
a huge thing. So one thing you can do if you have a species that will tolerate this is pull the eggs, put in fake plastic eggs, and then put all the eggs back in when she's done. I've done that a few times. What I tend to do, my general philosophy is I let the birds figure it out. So I
Yep.
let the birds make mistakes. I accept that with a new pair, I might lose the first clutch, second, or even the third clutch, and then they've got it figured out and they're dialed in. I had to do that with one of my Bork pairs. They spent a whole season. First they laid eggs that were infertile. Okay, toss those after 2 weeks. Then they laid eggs that were fertile and none of them hatched correctly. Okay, toss those. Then the next one, they laid eggs, they hatched one at a time because they weren't
Yeah.
incubated right, and then they died day two, day two, day two.
Yeah.
Finally, now they're automatic, Bork machines, right?
Yep.
So sometimes, even though it's kind of heart wrenching, it's better to let them learn than it is to try to do too much. And I think maybe that's a good message overall for this is don't the birds are going to learn. They either already know or they're going to figure it out. Again, just provide them that baseline, let them kind of work through these issues, and you should see improvement.
Yeah, I agree. And then, I think taking it to the next step, Jay, you've got chicks in the nest. Um, Keep providing, don't change anything. If anything, increase what you're doing, right? Increase your egg food intake. But be aware, if you got four 1 day old chicks in the nest, don't give them 10 scoops of egg food, right? Those chicks are tiny. Their intake is very minimal. and the parents are very picky on what they're going to eat and give to those babies. So they're really only going to eat 10% of that egg food. So be aware of that. And then as your chicks get older, then you can increase the amount because now the parents are feeding them everything. They're kind of pounding it, kind of my general rule of thumb. And then I keep providing soft foods, millet spray, seeds, all the way throughout, even even to once the chicks fledge from the nest. I try to keep the parents together, and so both of them can raise and wean the chicks. Many times on certain species, your females will go to nest again before the chicks are weaned. So be aware of that. Sometimes I will provide a second nest. There'll be times where it doesn't work out because the chicks will keep going back in the nest and it disrupts the incubation period for the female. So if that's the case, I'll wait till the female lays her fourth egg and then I'll separate the babies with the male. So the male can finish feeding them and then the hen, who should have her eggs fertilized by the male, she can focus on incubating. And then as soon as the male, after about a week, weans these chicks, then I'll put the chicks out in a different cage, bring the male back in with the female, and he can help her raise this second clutch. So just a kind of a few things, but making sure you keep the same intake. If anything, increase the amount of egg food as your chicks get bigger. Allow that variety of foods for your birds, whether it's sprouted seed, millet seed, different types of egg food, veggies. I mean, certain species, different types of fruit. Things like that. Give them insects, give them a good variety to be able to raise these chicks and wean them. I try to keep the family together. And as soon as I see the chicks eating, but most importantly, drinking water, then that's my sign that they're weaning. And then you can take them away from the parents. Usually it's the water has been my number one trick. As soon as I see them drinking water and swallowing, that usually for me, in my experience, has meant that my chicks now can take care of themselves, feed themselves and drink. Because lots of times they'll spend about a week playing with the food, trying to eat it,
Hmm.
but they're still being weaned by the parents. But as soon as I see them eating the egg food and seed and then getting a drink of water, then that's my sign that I feel comfortable pulling them out. What
Right.
about you, Jake?
Okay. Yeah. So let's go over the timeline here a little bit because I just want to kind of simplify it. So you get your eggs laid, you get a 13-day incubation, you get a hatch. Every species at that point does start to vary a little bit, but as a general rule, 21 days after hatching is fledging. As a general rule, some are sooner, some are a little later, but
Yeah, I can say
roughly,
15 to 21 days, but 21 being the average for sure.
yeah, yeah. So 2, 3 weeks, and fledging looks like a fully feathered bird sitting at the edge of the nest, and then they'll eventually make the leap, just like you've seen on National Geographic. Um, don't, and okay, I want to finish the timeline, and then I'll kind of get back and clarify. So after that, depending on the species, anywhere from 2 to up to like 5, 6 weeks to wean. So, like for instance, your zebra finches, typically at the end of week one, they're starting to mess with the food. By the end of week two, I'm seeing them definitely eating egg food and starting to work on seeds by the end of week three. And they're getting fed by mom and dad the whole time. And when zebra finches are getting fed, you'll know you can't miss it. They're quite
Yeah,
loud, but I can hear them, anywhere in my yard. But I love that sound though, because I know what it means. But
same.
then they, um, once you really see them consistently eating seed on their own, drinking on their own, then you can separate them. Waiting too long, if you wait past like 2, 3 months, then they'll start to probably get in conflict with mom and dad because mom and dad, through instincts, chase them away, and that's an
Yes.
inbreeding prevention response. And but that
Yeah.
eventually the birds will give up on that, and then you have an inbreeding problem. So you do
Yeah.
want to separate them at that time, or have a really big cage for that to happen.
And sometimes
So
your zebra finches can get pretty aggressive with them. I
yeah,
mean,
they
pulling
can.
feathers, things like that. Other species, they're not that aggressive, and then yeah, you get that
Mhm.
that inbreeding issue.
I've had a male zebra finch grab one of his sons by the wing and throw him across the cage like a WWE match. So yeah, you got to be that was 20 years ago, but yeah, you got to be careful with that. That's how I learned that lesson. Like, holy smokes,
Yeah.
what is that? Um, so yeah, so you want to work them through that weaning, and then once they're weaned, typically what kind of what you were talking about before they wean, mom's going to go back start. So there's about the second clutch tends to start about a week before weaning is finished,
Yeah.
depending on the species. Some species, like shaft tails, mine tend to, they have kind of a longer wean, and
Hmm.
then they tend to like start again really right as the birds wean. But every species is a little different. This is where watching your birds, observing them comes in. And I mean, that's pretty much it. And I keep egg food up after my breeding season's over, which is in October, is when I pull all my nest boxes. But I'll still have chicks weaning at that point, and I'll keep the egg food, the daily egg food up until I'm fully confident that every single baby bird is eating seed, and then I'll
Yeah.
dwindle the egg food down. I don't just hard stop it. I'll
Yep.
go from 7 days a week down to five, down to three, down to two over several weeks. And then we'll go to the austerity diet until we get to molting time. But I think that I mean that's pretty much the timeline. So you're going to get your pair, you're going to get them in a breeding condition, you're going to let them lay, you're going to incubate for about 13 days. So people always ask me, well, how do I know? Oh, I guess fertility check. We could go over that, and I've got a lot of videos on it. But you can
Same
hold the
here.
eggs up to a light. If they are dark purple or red and you can see little veins, fertile. If they're still yellow and they look like just kind of like what an egg looks like when you crack it to eat one, not fertile.
Yep.
I typically go till like day 18, 19 before I fully give up because eggs can
Same.
last
Yeah.
like up to a week in some cases before they start getting set and then they start developing.
Yeah.
So I don't go to day 14 and say, oh, I
Yeah.
go day 18, 19. But
And
so
and when you're
go ahead.
checking for that fertility, Jay, a rule of thumb that I do, I usually try to check between like 5 and 7 days when they first start
Right.
sitting. Usually by that seventh day, there should be development, right? Especially with your finches that hatch at 13 days. If I check it and I don't see any fertility, I will give them like 4 more days and then I'll go check again because sometimes maybe they didn't. I thought they started sitting this day, but they really didn't start sitting this day, and I could be off by a few days. So I do give it kind of a grace period, right? So if you check it and you see no development in your 4 to 6 eggs, which is a typical clutch, I will wait another 3 days and then check again. And by that third day, if I don't see any development, I'm pretty confident that none of those eggs are fertile, and I can pull them out of the nest. And then, same with what you said on fertile eggs. I will extend past that 13th day. If, yeah, by that 18th day, if they haven't hatched, then I know they're probably not going to, and I feel comfortable pulling them and making sure I'm not pulling
Mhm.
a live chick in an egg.
Right. And I mean, so it's all, this is all kind of a patience waiting game. Um, it doesn't hurt the mom long term to pull eggs, throw eggs. I get people all the time, my bird laid eggs and I don't want her to breed. What do I do? Throw them away. That's the easiest solution. Throw them away. Sometimes I've taken button quail eggs that I didn't want to hatch and I've hard boiled them and fed them back
Uh huh. I
in
did
the
that
egg
this week,
food.
actually,
Yeah,
yesterday.
so they lay like chickens. They lay one a day pretty much every day. So, um, stuff like that. But as a general rule, yeah, it's totally fine to just dispose of eggs. It's also totally fine to just not give your birds a nest box
Yep.
if you don't want them to breed. They don't need one to sleep in. I see this all the time online. It's just not true. Birds in the wild don't have a nest when they're not breeding.
Yeah.
They just
Majority of
don't.
them perch on a tree or a branch
Hmm.
unless they have eggs in a nest box. But
Right.
other than that, they typically don't retreat back to a nest
Es-
box in the wild.
Especially your passerines. My birds do not have a nest box half the year. They're all
Yeah.
fine. They do
Yeah.
great. So yeah, so you get to your 13-ish days, birds hatch, they develop. First they'll some are born naked, some are born with down. They get to where their eyes open, then they start to get pin feathers. Then to check for if they're being fed by the parents or not, they have a crop, which is like a pouch around their neck.
Yep.
The first day, they shouldn't be fed at all. They're still absorbing the yolk. The second day, you'll see it's about the size of like a big piece of salt, just a little like yellowish thing in their
Yep.
neck. By the fifth or sixth day, you want to see big, full pouches. And by like day 10-ish, right when you're starting to kind of disappear into the feathers, you want to see like chipmunk cheek, giant
Yeah.
food tumors, basically.
And it's a see-through, right? So you can see
Hmm.
the egg
You can see what they're
literally
eating. You can see what
in
the
the
babies are being fed.
crop. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Which is a
would,
good tool for knowing what egg food to provide.
right. And I'd probably say, Jay, just the last thing. I know we've talked about breeding, right? Most species of birds are, uh, they do well with company of other species or of other birds, right? They're a community bird. I would not ever recommend keeping a finch by itself. If you don't want to breed, try your best. I know some species you can't visually sex male or female. Um, get the same gender. If you don't want to breed, get two females or get two males. They will be just as happy as a pair. In fact, they'll probably act like a pair, but then you won't get any chicks if you're not wanting to breed. So that's one thing I would recommend. I think most of the comments I get is, "Hey, I just bought these birds and now I've got eggs and I don't know what to do with them and I wasn't ready to breed them, things like that." So try to get the same genders, either species or either gender, and they'll be just as happy. And then you don't have to worry about chicks. So that's something you can do as well if you're thinking of getting into finches
Yeah, I've got
or
a
any
long
bird
time
really.
follower that has a beautiful outdoor aviary, and she does breed, but she doesn't do it in the aviary. And in the aviary, it's an all male aviary. She's got like 35 birds, a bunch of different species. They're all male. It's good to go. The Everyone, people who say like, oh, they're going to fight and stuff. What causes birds to fight more than anything is too small of a cage,
Yeah,
right? That it's the stress of that. You'd fight with somebody if you had to live in a phone booth with them all the time. Eventually, be like, hey, get your elbow out of my chin. We're fighting. So that's not necessarily an issue on a sex thing.
yeah,
Definitely fine to do that. Um, I mean, I think that about covers it. I know we kind of jumped
yeah,
around there, but hopefully, if you got questions, comment sections down there,
yeah.
we
Please do.
both get in, mix it up, try to help you out. If someone wants to DM you and ask you a question, Chris, how could they do it?
Yeah, reach out to me. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all of it is Bird Nerd. Instagram's Bird Nerd 4, but it's all got the same logo, same symbol. My Instagram and Facebook accounts are linked. So if you message me on one or the other, I'll get it. And then I check my YouTube account almost daily for comments and things like that. So yeah, reach out to me. Feel free to PM me or just drop a comment in any of the videos, and I try to within a few days at least respond to the comments. Sometimes not as good because life's crazy, but try my best. So have patience with me. But how about you, Jay? How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I'm the Javiary or the underscore Javiary on everything. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, which sucks. I'm on Reddit and YouTube, right? So, and if you're trying to get a hold of Chris and you can only find me, believe it or not, I have Chris's information and we can make this all work.
Yep, vice versa.
Um, if you're looking for birds for sale and you're West Coast, Chris is probably your best option. If you're East Coast, I'm your guy. If I have something, Chris doesn't, we can work that out. If he's got something and I don't,
Absolutely.
we've referred each other all the time. We'll help each other out. We'll figure it out. So we're here. We're doing this because we want to help people. We want to help y'all. So ask questions. I want to
Yes,
answer them.
please.
Um, you know, we want to help. So we're here for that. This is, the very basic overview of how to breed finches. And feel free to not do it, right? You don't
Yeah,
have to breed them. They
yeah,
can live happy, complete lives. But if you're wanting to, this is a good baseline for how you do that.
yep. I agree 100%.
All right. Well, that's it for this one. Thanks, y'all, and we'll catch you in the next one.
See you guys.